to Sunday Satsang. This morning we're reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda, and this affirmation is on love. One finds love not by being loved, but by loving. We can never know love if we try to draw others to ourselves, nor can we find it by centering our love in them. For love is infinite, it is never ours to create. We can only channel it from its source in infinity to all whom we meet. The more we forget ourselves in giving to others, the better we can understand what love really is. And the more we love as channels for God's love, the more we can understand that He is the one love in all the universe. Let's affirm together. I will love others as extensions of my own self.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
And of the love I feel from God.
And the love I feel from God.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
And of the love I feel from God.
And the love I feel from God.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
And of the love I feel from God.
And of the love I feel from God.
A little more quietly. I will love others as extensions of my own self.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
And of the love I feel from God.
And the love I feel from God.
I will love others as extensions of my own self. And of the love I feel from God. And now in a whisper, I will love others as extensions of my own self. And of the love I feel from God. And silently at the point between the eyebrows, I will love others as extensions of my own self. And of the love I feel from God. I will love others as extensions of my own self, and of the love I feel from God. And please pray silently with me. O Infinite One, make me a channel for Thy love. Through me, reach out to sow seeds of love in barren hearts everywhere. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen.
And good morning once again. This reading is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda, entitled, Demand Not to be Enslaved by the Ego, or by Ego-Centered Passivity. I want to use my own will, but guide it ever, Father, toward the golden paradise of all fulfillment. For I would be infinity's smiling child, confident of being imprisoned no longer behind bars of fruitless desire, and withered hopes. I would break the shameful cords of lethargy that have presumed to hold me, and step fearlessly into freedom. Released, I now blaze my way through forests of every limitation and delusion. Oh, my little vain ego may strut proudly saying, Behold my glory, worship me. But I will look through its transparent form and behold thine unimaginable beauty, clothed in the subtle form of the whole universe. The silence-tuned hearing of my soul will ignore the tiny, boasting masquerader, my little self impersonating thee, and I will listen rapturously to the wind-born, fragrant music of thine own matchless voice, whispering across the ages, I am he. And from the New Path by Swami Kriyananda, this is drawn from the chapter Verses Meditation. And this is Swami Kriyananda when he was just new at the ashram there in Mount Washington, talking with Mrs. Brown, who was later Mira Mata, who was in charge of training the young renunciates. Mrs. Brown, whose frail body never seemed to run out of energy no matter how much she did, laughed merrily. You see, the very thought of pleasing God fills us with energy. Master tells us it's our unwillingness that cuts off the flow of energy. True, I replied thoughtfully. As often as I put that principle to practice, I found it works marvelously. But I continued, there's another obstacle I run into, that of being too willing. What can one do about that? How can one be too willing? Well, what I mean is, I become over-enthusiastic about what I'm doing. As a result, I lose my inner peace and fall into the old consciousness of hard work, which ends in exhaustion. I see. Mrs. Brown nodded sympathetically. That's right. Without inner peace, we lose the consciousness of God's presence. And if we can't feel Him within us, we can't really feel His energy. Again, she laughed merrily. Master taught me a good lesson on that subject, too. He was cooking one day in his kitchen. I was there in the room with him. For lack of anything better to do, I decided I'd clean up after him. The moment he emptied one pan, I'd wash it. Whenever he spilled anything, I cleaned up the mess. Well, he began dirtying pans and more pans, spilling food and more food. I was working faster and faster to keep up with him. In my whole life, I had never seen such sloppy cooking. At last, I just gave up. It occurred to me that I might as well wait until he was finished before I did any more. As I sat down to watch him, I noticed a little smile on his face, though he said nothing. Presently, I saw he wasn't messing things up anymore. Finally, it dawned on me that he had only been teaching me the difference between calm, God-reminding activity and the sort of restlessness that one indulges just for activity's sake. I had been working in a spirit of busyness. Master's way of showing me my mistake was to lead me to its own logical conclusion. I myself learned in time to make inner peace my bottom line. No matter how many calls I had had on my energies, I have never allowed them to bring me to the point where my inner peace becomes threatened. This was a vital lesson for Swami Kriyananda in building Ananda, where he really, truly understood, undoubtedly he understood long before, but nevertheless, that this is a path of intense activity. And as he had the challenge of building Ananda from scratch, which was very, very, very difficult in the early 60s, there were communities starting all over, especially in California and in the US and perhaps throughout the world. And Swami used to joke that most communities during that time only lasted 1 month. And that was because after a month the rent was due. And then everyone fled because they didn't come to start community and do all that work. They came to go swimming and all the other things that would be fun for them. What is all this hard work and so forth. And so Swami Kriyananda in building community found that there were so many pulls on his energy. As a matter of fact, many, many years later, after Ananda was well established and we had other communities too, he said in a way it was like being a tycoon. And of course, he wasn't a tycoon, he was a spiritual giant. But because he had so much going on in not only starting community, but writing books and composing music and training people and traveling extensively and on it went. The list was, so large. From time to time, just for fun, he would say, well, let's see what got accomplished this year. And out he would pull the list, and he would just read on and on and on, and that was 1 year. At one point, this again was in at the early stages of Ananda, someone came up to him and was basically consoling him, saying, you've really had a hard year, and there was this that went on, and this other thing, and so forth. And he said, oh my. He wasn't even relating to it. He just said, oh my, that was a very full and challenging year. Because as his bottom line, he would not allow his peace of mind and primarily his joy to be affected. Because without that, then what was he able to give? Even Yogananda, again, a true titan and saint, The amount of things and so forth that he produced was colossal. But he said that when he would go into seclusion, he would remark to the disciples, sometimes the will likes to be unfrequented. And that's what we are. We are wills. We are wills filled with all the divine qualities. And if we find that the will somehow is beginning to go dry, it's not a difficult thing to sleuth out as to what the issue is. It's simply that we have allowed, as Yogananda said, don't poke holes in your bucket of peace. And that's something that we can do if we're not careful. As Yogananda said, people are so skillful in their ignorance. And the next thing we know, we are doing all of our lists dutifully and accomplishing, quite a lot. And the bottom line of our rupees, that too is being accomplished and everything. But we're feeling arid inside. We're feeling dry. That's when we need to train ourselves that we have lost sight of our priorities. We can have two bottom lines, the bottom lines of keeping the lights on and the roof over our head, and the bottom line of peace of mind. Which is the most important? In this world, it's gotten topsy-turvy. Topsy-turvy, where everyone is working so diligently on all the things that are required materially, which is fine. We need those things. But it's gotten out of the balance. And so at one point, and it can even be some decades that go by, and they wake up and they say, oh my God, what have I done? I was visiting with someone not too long ago, and he said a couple of decades had passed by. He had been very moved by the autobiography of a yogi, and he had even had some very, very profound spiritual experiences. But then he got swept away. And that's what happens to us. Remember Narada, that classic story where he was asked to get a glass of water for the Lord. And out he went. And though in the Lord's time, in God's time, only half an hour passed, but he knocked on one of the doors to see in the distance, as he had tramped across the countryside, he found a home and he knocked on the door, and there was a beautiful woman. And the next thing you know, he got married, he had kids. He was supposed to just get a glass of water for the Lord. And then God really saved him, although it was tragic, in this dream world. A flood came, he was swept away, he lost everything. And then the Lord found him in the sand. And he said, well, I sent you to get a glass of water a half an hour ago. God's time and our time, vastly different. And then he was reunited and shook his head in great wonder as to how that could have happened. He had a family, he had kids. What was this? He had been dreaming. And so this peace of mind that we absolutely have to have, this willingness, this joy, this love, these are things that cannot be compromised. Swami Kriyananda made a very startling statement some time back where he said, for me, and remember that he's the builder of Ananda, the builder of community, and of this great work. He said, for me, it's been 95% compromise. And when I heard that, I was just shocked. You know how from time to time your mind stops? Well, my mind stopped. I thought, my God, I can't believe that. And I gave it more thought. And of course, then I remembered that he also said, along with that shocking statement, I never compromise my principles. Because 95% of the things that he compromised didn't really matter. Should we plant this tree here? Well, his preference was to plant it over there. But everybody else wanted to plant it over in this spot. Okay, fine. And as we watched him, because we all watch one another, but it's a special joy and a tremendous blessing to watch these saintly souls, we watched him. And many, many times he would say, well, if that's what you want. As Master said at one point, he got a rug, a new rug, that was a surprise from the disciples. And he said, I liked my old rug. But he said, this rug looks like a hotel. But if all of you like it, then I like it too. It didn't matter to him because he was tuning into that which motivated that gift, which was love. And that's where he lived. And that's where all the masters live. And so we, again, have to continually simplify our lives. It's very, very important. Again, from Yogananda said, this is the formula. Plain living and high thinking. Most, again, have it backwards. And it's high living and plain thinking if they think at all. As one of the poets said, most people are other people. Oh, look at him, he's wearing his hat sideways. I better wear my hat sideways or backwards or something. And oh, they're wearing sunglasses. Oh, I should wear sunglasses because otherwise I'm just not, hip. What is this? And so we find ourselves drifting about if we don't look out. And even as disciples, we find ourselves losing our courage to be ourselves. And that takes courage. As recently with our odd president that we have, there's been quite a lot of thought around, you have to fight to keep democracy. And they recently I read, I'd never heard it before, although it's probably basic to most people, that there was a statement that Jefferson made that the fourth arm of government is journalism, because that keeps people, ideally, it's not doing a very good job these days, but that ideally then keeps everybody on their toes. The judicial branch, the legislative branch, the executive branch, they're kept on their toes because they don't know if the Boston Globe will write a little something that exposes then all of this graft and shenanigans that are going on. And so we too have to have our conscience intact. We have to keep our hearts open. We have to keep in a state of peace, because in a state of peace, we will have that needed clarity. In a state of peace, we will have that needed charity. In a state of peace, we'll have everything because we'll be centered. And when we're centered, and that, of course, is the goal of yoga, when we're centered, then everything falls in place quite nicely. I love Swamiji's image when he would teach meditation. He said, think of this image, a marionette puppet with a string. You pick up the string at the top of the head and the marionette falls nicely in place. Most people, their life is a jumble of strings. They pick it up by the toe, whatever their life is. They pick it up by a finger and so on, and they wonder why they're careening off the walls and creating havoc wherever they go, especially in their own self. Because they have either not learned the valuable lesson, the world is their guru, at this point perhaps. They haven't learned the valuable lesson, which is everything in yoga, which is to be centered in the spine. And so as we become uncompromising with this, and this is very, very important, we must, as Yogananda said, be very joyous and happy at all times. And I can't tell you how many times that has saved me. A mood comes. Something unfair comes into my life, seemingly unfair. How could that be when God does not make a mistake with regards to the distribution of our karma? Oops, sorry, I gave this one karma, it was meant for you. Please excuse me. Oh my goodness, how did that happen? You've been suffering for 10 years, and that was Vivek's karma. Oh, for goodness sakes, I've got to, clean out my eyeglasses, and maybe, I need to go into seclusion, says God. Doesn't happen. God's perfect, and He distributes the karma perfectly according to His law. Thankfully, Divine Mother's around and says, I don't know. I think I'm going to take some of this karma. They've been at it for a while, dealing with all this craziness, and then that grace comes. And then we're free of things that perhaps have pursued us, our karma, for some time. Thank God for that. And so we as yogis cannot forget for an instant, because really if we do, it's a mistake, and can be even a grave mistake. The grace that has been given to us, this gift of life, of an inner life, is extremely precious. Extremely precious. And so we need to guard it in a way like a dragon guards treasure, because it is a treasure. But it's not a treasure just for us. The dragon hoards the treasure. Yeah, that's not good. This treasure of our inner life, this consciousness that's becoming purer and purer, ideally by the day, needs to be shared. And it needs to be shared by our good thoughts. And it needs to be shared by our charitable acts. And it needs to be shared in all ways. And so, by doing that, what do we experience? We experience more and more omnipresence, which is that shining goal before us. We don't want to be thinking in terms of, oh, I'll never get there. What is that? That's not helpful. No, I'm just a lump. That's who I am. That doesn't do anything. I'm always asleep. I'm an idiot. What is that? All of these things are nothing. Nothing. What is it? What is it to experience God as the doer? God is the doer. We experience that when we get out of the way. That's humility. Humility isn't, I'm this and I'm that. And it doesn't even help either to say, oh, I'm the greatest thing that the earth has ever produced. Yogananda said, I could sing my own praises and do that all day. Of course, he could do it for thousands of years too. That doesn't do any good either. We want to get away from all karma. Remember, karma, good karma, bad karma. Chains of gold. Chains, though, of gold still bind. We don't want any karma. And so that takes vigilance. That takes selflessness. That takes a very strong determination to live ego-free. It takes a very, very strong remembrance of, as Yogananda, as Gyanamata Yogananda's most advanced disciple talked about, God alone. And so, though we worked very hard, very, very hard, Yogananda said that he had the experience, I believe it was the experience of St. Anthony, where St. Anthony remembered all of the incarnations that he was seeking God. And Yogananda, in great joy, shouted out, I remember that. I remember that. All of those are incarnations that I was seeking God. What joy comes from that experience. And so we want to use this incarnation wisely because we've been working at it for a long, long time, and we've got a good shot at getting out. Because Swami Kriyananda didn't say this to torment us. He said, you should go after Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is the permanent state of bliss. We don't fall from that ever. We have that for eternity. We should go after that this lifetime. I was just rereading in conclusion, I'll share, from Yogananda. He said, we are in God for eternity. We are caught in delusion for a short time. Stamp that in our consciousness. Short time. Then back in God for eternity. You weigh eternity with a short time, where we're running around as God playing the part of a fool in this delusion. A short time. And then back in God for eternity? If that's not a reason to love God, I don't know what is. It's a short time. A very, very short time. So let's work on our willingness. Let's work on staying in a state of peace at all times. Let's do what we can more and more as we interact with people to see the God in them and the God in ourselves. And as we're able to do that more and more, we'll find our consciousness being blissfully transformed. So, as always, it's a joy to be with you. God bless you. Have a happy day for all those tuning into the web. God bless you as well.